demo is to accompany your week 3 Collaborate session, and we'll cover projects 9A, B, C, and D from your drawing projects videos within the course. So first of all, I have chosen to look through my studio into the hallway, into my kitchen to create deep space. We also are looking at 3 different values. So my kitchen is a lighter space than my hallway, which is a little darker in value. It's a little just shadier in there. My studio space is not as dark as I would like for this project, but that's the great thing about being an artist. You can invent. I've placed a stool in the doorway here as an object that's going to be closer to the viewer, and I'm going to draw that in a darker value, and we'll see how it goes. So starting out with 9A, you are going to create 2 sketches, 9A and 9B, in your sketchbook, and they will count as 2 sketches toward your 14 weekly sketch count. So for the sake of you being able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to use a softer charcoal pencil. And first you're going to do 1 in a vertical composition and 1 in a horizontal composition. So since I'm not using a sketchbook so you can see what I'm doing, I'm going to create a vertical box. And pretend that this is my sketchbook. And I'll create a horizontal box. And the purpose is, again, to figure out what your composition is going to be, what's going to work best for your drawing. So remember, a sketch it's loose, it doesn't have as much detail, you're looking for larger shapes and composition. So first I'm going to try my vertical composition, and start with my door frame here. Sketches are loose, you're just sort of finding your way. The door's coming out at an angle like this. Then I've got a stool. Pencil is not as soft as I would like it to be. Alright, so that's my first space. Then looking behind, got the hallway, and the doorway in the hallway. And I can see the top of the door jamb there, wall goes that way, and then it looks into my kitchen, going back here. See a little of the cabinet. And the door in the kitchen has a window. And the tile is coming out at us like that. So I have basic composition there. I want my hallway to be a middle gray, so I'm going to push in that value in my hallway. I'm experimenting here. Your composition can be linear if you just want to look at the lines, but I want to see how this value is going to work. So my hallway, I'm going to push in that shadow a little more. My kitchen, the windows the brightest. There'll be a little shadow on that back wall, but really that window and the door is the brightest. In the foreground, I'm going to have my stool. And this area be the very darkest. So a sketch is essentially problem solving. We're trying to figure out the best way to make something work. Now remember that shadow is going to fall into your room at places, so you might have a little light on the floor coming through here. But in general, I'm going to have my foreground. So I'll have my darkest dark in the front, my middle gray, and my lightest room in the back. Same thing is going to take place over here. I'm just checking to see how my composition will work. On a horizontal, I'm not going to be able to fit in the tops of the door frames. And my stool would probably be up here. Everything would be further cropped. Hallway would come back here. And I really can't see much of my kitchen at all. Floor going back, back door. I think it's easy to say with my chosen composition that a vertical is going to be the best. But for the sake of checking this out, I'm going to push in my darker value in the foreground. On my chair. Middle value, my hallway. And the lightest is my kitchen. So for me, I think that the best composition is going to be going with the vertical, where I can really see the different doorways looking through my space into the kitchen. So that would be 9A and 9B in your sketchbook. And the next thing you have to do is your picture plane, which you should all be pretty comfortable with at this point. And remember, your picture plane drawing is to act as a reference for your final drawing. So, I don't know if I can get back far enough or that you'll see this. My picture plane, I'm going to have to get further away and it won't work very well for our purposes here, but I'll just do what I can see. Closing one eye, top of the stool, door jamb. I can't see the top of the door jamb. It helps you get your perspective worked out. That door in the back there. And it's better if you can lean it against something so you're not moving around as much as I am. Yep, I don't know if that's going to help you at all. If we put it against my yellow paper, you can get an idea on where I was going with that. So, make sure your picture plane drawing is useful to you and helps you figure out your size relationships and where you're going with that drawing. Okay, then your picture plane drawing was 9C, and then your final drawing is 9D, deep space on your mid-size paper in 3 values. So, okay, I've determined that my vertical composition is going to be the best. And so I'm going to start working on my deep space drawing. 9D. If you need to use a ruler on some of your straight lines, that's all right. I'm using my charcoal pencil. I'm using a softer one, a 4B, so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to use a ruler just for a little bit here. Now you can get fairly detailed with your drawing. Get those door jambs in there. Pictures, if you have pictures on the walls, carpets, floor tile, anything that you have to include. And remember to look at the angles of your ceiling or angles of doors if they're going off. I have a door right here going into this room, and we can't see the top of the wall there. My stool, let's see, using my unit of measurement, My stool's about a quarter, about right here. I'm going to mark that off and then lay in the rest of my drawing. The bottom of the doorway for the hallway, 1, 2, 3, is very close to my stool, just a little bit lower. So my unit of measurement, I measured from the bottom of the door jamb to where I can see the opening for my kitchen, and looked at how many times that goes into the height of the doorway. So you want to make sure that your heights are relating well to each other. Get that stool just a little bit higher there. And I can see about that far into the hallway. And okay. My opening to the kitchen comes about here. And let's see how wide that doorway is compared to how tall it is. So about 2.5 widths high. So I need to go a little skinnier. So compare openings. So I'm comparing this to how many times it goes into the height of the door. That way you're getting your proportions fairly right. I can also see a little bit of the corner of the hallway there, about that far over. And a little bit of the doorway on the other side. The angle's coming just about like that. It's peeking through. Okay, so looking into my kitchen, let's see how far up the back of the kitchen wall is compared to my door jamb. So about, let's see, nope, a little bit higher. 1, 2, that feels better. So that back wall of my kitchen comes about here. And then the kitchen cabinet sticks out a little bit. And the door starts about here. And I can see a little bit of the kitchen ceiling. And the door is much smaller in relationship to everything else. So let's see. I'm going to measure the height of that door to my hallway opening. I've got that about right. I'm guessing it's about that wide. Let's see. A little bit skinnier. window comes up a little higher than the counter. There's some shade on there. Doorknob comes down about that far. There's some little recessed rectangles in my door. Try to get those lined up. And you can see a little bit of my kitchen light right here. And I'm going to shade in my kitchen a very light value, because the lightest light is coming through that window. There's a little light falling on the kitchen floor, so I'm going to leave that fairly white. My hallway, though, is pretty much in shadow, and I'm going to let that be my middle gray. And remember to think of the whole space as being in shadow, not just some of the objects in it. So pretend you're standing in that hallway and you're feeling the darker value of the room. If you need to, you can turn lights off in your rooms, turn lights on in your rooms. Maybe you could find a good space at work looking down a hallway, or even looking from one room onto through a window to a patio or something like that. Okay, still need to draw my stool in there. I'm pushing in my shadows in my hallway. It's okay if I go over the lines a little bit here, because I know my front room is going to be even darker, so I'll be covering that up. And some of the light from the kitchen's hitting the floor. I'll push some of that shadow in around the sides of the floor. And indicate the lines on the tile. They get wider as they get closer to us, and narrower as they go further back into space. All right, my stool is right here and comes into the door about this far. Best way to get any lips on the top of something is to create a box first. And find your midpoints. And then you can create that ellipse going inside of your box. The darker charcoal is more difficult to erase, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so the legs of my stool come down about yay far. I'm going to measure that compared to my door. 1.5. Maybe the top of the seat's better. Almost 2. Here, 1, a little bit lower. My back legs will fall, and my front 2 come down forward. My stool I'm going to make very black. It's my darkest dark. And my doorway is going to be much darker. Okay, so remember that shadows fall on floors, fall on ceilings. Think about the value of each space and the transition of those values between space. So obviously the room that I'm in here is not this dark, but as the artist I am making it that dark. I'm pushing the values in the foreground. So here we are with our completed drawing. And I just want to point out that if you want to tone your paper first with Vine charcoal, you can, and use your eraser to lift out some of the whites. And this concludes your Project 9D.